Honestly, the moment I touched upon the opening scenes of the story, a trembling shudder ran down my spine in horror. It's hard to believe that people can treat each other with such cold-hearted ruthlessness, especially within the relationships we hold most dear. My assessment of the antagonist is crystal clear. This is a glaring testament to a severe moral decay of the uneducated. The way they nonchalantly put on an act, fully exploiting the kindness and tolerance of others for their base interests, is despicable and tramples on every principle of human decency.
It was a Tuesday, not the kind of day you expect your life to detonate. I had left work early, something I rarely did, but Elise had forgotten her planner that morning and texted me asking if I could drop it off at her gym. She had one of those boutique fitness classes, something with hot yoga and eucalyptus towels, and I figured I'd get bonus points for being a thoughtful husband. Hell, I even stopped by her favorite cafe and picked up that ridiculous oat milk smoothie she loved. It was cold and slushy in the cup holder as I pulled into the parking lot. That's when I saw it. Elise's car, the black Audi we leased together, parked just a few rows down. She wasn't supposed to be done yet, but maybe she'd gotten out early. Maybe I'd catch her coming out and surprise her with the smoothie and planner, be the sweet guy who earns a kiss in return. But instead, I got something else. There was a silver SUV parked next to hers. I wouldn't have noticed anything if not for the way the bodies moved inside. Subtle, like a wave through tinted glass. My gut clenched. I parked and stared. There's a particular kind of stillness that comes over you when you know something is about to break. It's like every sound fades. The wind, the traffic, even the hum of your own mind. And all that's left is the sharp blade of reality about to cut. I got out. I walked slowly. I didn't think. My hand still held the smoothie, the lid sweating through the paper bag. And then I saw them. Elise. Her face angled toward a man I didn't recognize. Dark hair. Stubble. Strong jaw. She was smiling. Flushed. That smile I thought was mine. Her hand touched his cheek before she leaned in and kissed him. Not a peck. Not a mistake. A kiss like they'd done it before. A kiss like they knew each other's taste. The smoothie dropped from my hand and splattered across the pavement. Neither of them noticed. I didn't shout. Didn't run up. I just turned around and walked away like a man heading to his own funeral. The planner was still in my other hand. I left it in the passenger seat. Drove off. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just floated. Numb. My hands on the wheel, but my body 1,000 miles away. Back home, I sat at the kitchen table for hours. The house was quiet. Elise wouldn't be back for another 2, maybe 3 hours. Plenty of time to drown in silence. I opened her laptop. Don't ask me why. Curiosity? Desperation? The password was the same as always. Our anniversary, 0415. Too fitting. I searched for anything. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I found his name quickly. Daniel K. His name came up in a few emails. I clicked. Subject, can't stop thinking about that last night. My heart hammered against my chest. But I kept reading. It went back months. Photos. Messages. Dates. One thread went all the way back to February. They had met at some real estate networking mixer, and from what I gathered, it had gone downhill, or uphill, for them, from there. The hotel receipts. The secret calendar entries. The joke about how she could moan louder because Lucas is on a work trip. I read it all. It was like watching a slow-motion car crash that had already happened. You couldn't look away, even if it destroyed you. I closed the laptop. Still no rage. Just confusion. Like I'd stepped into someone else's life. Like this wasn't happening to me. I got up, poured a glass of water, and sat back down. My reflection in the window looked like a ghost. Then, something clicked in my head. Not revenge. Not justice. Just context. I Googled him. Daniel Kemp. Real estate developer. Smiling LinkedIn profile. Clean suit. A face that screamed I drive a Tesla and cheat on my taxes. But what stopped me wasn't the business profile. It was the Facebook photos. He was married. Her name was Grace. I stared at the image of them together, arms around each other on a beach, 2 kids in front of them. She was beautiful in that unfiltered, authentic kind of way. Dark curls. Tired eyes. She didn't look like a woman who'd be okay with this. I wasn't even sure what I intended to do with that information. I didn't want to blow up their world. I didn't want to call her and say, "Hey, your husband is screwing my wife." That felt cheap. Cruel. Even if it was the truth. But I wanted to see her. Not even talk. Just see the person on the other side of this wreckage. And so, the next morning, I drove to the address listed on one of Daniel's real estate forms. It wasn't hard to find. Google is merciless that way. I parked across the street. The house was quiet. Suburban. Immaculate lawn. 2 bikes leaned against the garage. A dog barked in the distance. I sat in my car and waited. 15 minutes. Then 20. And that's when I saw her. Grace. She wasn't at the house. She was sitting on a bench at the edge of the park across the street. Alone. A coffee cup in hand. And somehow, even from that distance, I knew. She wasn't just sitting there. She was watching the house too. My breath caught in my throat. I stepped out of the car and started walking. And that's where the next part begins. I didn't plan to speak to her. Honestly, I didn't even know what I was doing there. It was impulse, obsession, maybe even grief, disguised as curiosity. Grace sat on the weathered wooden bench like someone who had been there before, like it was routine. Her posture wasn't slouched, but it wasn't proud either. She looked tired, not physically, emotionally. There's a weariness in the shoulders that only betrayal can carve. I stopped walking about 20 feet from the bench, not wanting to seem like some creep emerging from the trees. She was sipping her coffee slowly, her eyes glued to the 2-story house with the charcoal shutters and the dogwood tree in the yard. Daniel's house. I waited there awkwardly, unsure what to do with my hands, my face, even my legs. I felt out of place in my own skin. Then she turned. Her eyes locked onto mine like she already knew. No flinch, no suspicion, just a quiet understanding. I opened my mouth to speak, but she beat me to it. So, you found out too? Her voice was calm. No anger. No bitterness. Just a kind of cold resignation that made my chest tighten. I stepped forward, slow and unsure, and nodded once. Yesterday, I said. Parking lot by her gym. She was in his car. They kissed. Grace let out a slow exhale and looked down at her cup. You got the kiss. I got the hotel receipt. She let that hang in the air for a second before adding. Actually, 10 of them. I sat on the other end of the bench. We didn't look at each other. Just 2 strangers staring at the same nightmare from opposite sides. I'm Lucas, I said after a while. Elise's husband. She nodded slowly. Grace. Daniel's wife. Legally, at least. A ghost of a smile crept to her lips, but it didn't reach her eyes. I didn't expect to see anyone else here, I admitted. I just wanted to see who he was. What his life looked like. Grace took another sip, then looked over at me. I come here sometimes. Usually when I know he's home, and I'm supposed to be somewhere else. Work, errands, yoga. I just watch. I guess it's my way of proving I'm not crazy. You're not, I said, perhaps too quickly. You're really not. Funny, she said. Because for a long time, I thought I was. You know how it goes. The phone flipped over every time it's on the table, sudden gym habits, smiling at texts he won't let you see, the weird way he started showering after work instead of before. I didn't respond, but I felt a weight drop deeper in my stomach. Elise had started doing the same things. And I, too, had thought maybe I was just being paranoid. Grace went on. He started coming home late, blaming work, deadlines, bad clients. And I believed it. Because you don't want to admit that someone you've built a life with would choose someone else over you. My voice came out rougher than I expected. Yeah. We sat in silence again. There was something strangely intimate about that silence. Not romantic, nothing like that. But the kind of quiet that only happens between people who don't need to explain the hurt. People who know. I haven't told him I know, she said. Me neither, I replied. Not yet. Grace looked at me. Do you plan to? I shrugged. I don't know. It's like, if I say it out loud, it becomes real. She nodded, lips pressed tight. Another pause. Then she said something that knocked the breath from my lungs. She started coming around 6 months ago. At first, I thought she was just another realtor. Daniel always works with pretty women. He's charming. It's his thing. She, I echoed. Elise. Grace nodded. Long dark hair, slim, always in heels. Confident. Smiles like she knows something you don't. I gave a bitter laugh. Yeah, that's her. They had lunch together a lot. Supposedly work meetings. Sometimes drinks. One night, he didn't come home until almost midnight. Said the deal ran late. But I could smell perfume on his collar. I asked who he was with, and he said 3 people. Wouldn't say names. He's smart like that. Leaves room for doubt. Just enough you feel crazy for questioning it. The weight between us thickened. I turned toward her. Why haven't you told him? Her eyes were locked on the house again. Because I'm still figuring out what hurts more, what he did, or the fact that I didn't see it sooner. And maybe, just maybe, I'm afraid of what happens when I let go. We have 2 kids, a mortgage, a reputation. I nodded. We don't have kids, but yeah, I get it. She looked down at her cup, then back at me. Are you planning to tell Elise you were here? I hesitated. No, probably not. Good, she said. Neither am I. And just like that, it felt like we'd signed an unspoken pact. 2 strangers bound by betrayal, deciding, for now, to hold the truth between them. Not as leverage, but as survival. Grace stood and smoothed her coat. This bench is the only place I don't have to pretend. Thanks for not making it worse. You didn't either, I said, standing beside her. We didn't hug, didn't shake hands. She walked one way. I walked the other. But I had a feeling we'd meet again. I didn't expect to see Grace again. It felt like our moment on the bench was a strange, painful detour, something that only made sense in the world of heartbreak and bad timing. But 2 days later, her name appeared on my phone. Unknown number. Coffee. I know a place that doesn't ask questions. I stared at the message for a good minute before replying. Me. When? Grace. Today. Noon. I'll text you the address. The cafe was tucked into the side of an old brick building downtown. One of those places that looked like it didn't care about trends, but still had the best espresso you'd ever taste. Inside, the light was soft, and the smell of roasted beans and cinnamon hung in the air like a memory you didn't know you missed. She was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 coffees and a quiet kind of sadness that somehow looked dignified. Hey, I said as I sat down. Hey, she echoed, and pushed one of the cups toward me. No cream, 2 sugars. I guessed. I smiled. You guessed right. She looked tired, the way people do when they've been pretending to sleep. She wore a soft gray sweater, her curls pulled up in a loose bun. No makeup this time. Still beautiful in a way that felt more real than what Elise wore to bed. I took a sip of the coffee. Thanks. She leaned back, exhaling slowly. So, did you tell her? I shook my head. You? Nope. And just like that, we were in it again. Not rehashing. Not complaining. Just comparing wounds like 2 veterans of the same war. How long do you think it's been going on? I asked. She looked down at her coffee. The first receipt I found was from early March. That was the first hotel I was sure about. But honestly, she shrugged. Before that, I think it started in January. Jesus, I muttered. She met my eyes. What about you? I thought back. Texts Elise had typed faster than she could explain, the way she started locking her phone, the perfume that wasn't hers. Probably February. The gym visits started then. Grace gave a half laugh, dry and bitter. Their stories probably line up better than ours. Probably, I said, and then silence again. It didn't feel awkward, though. It felt companionable, like sitting beside someone at a funeral. You didn't need to talk to know you both felt the same weight. I'm not angry, I said eventually. At least not in the way I thought I'd be. I'm just exhausted, she offered. Yeah, exactly. She nodded slowly, sipping her coffee. Everyone thinks anger is the natural reaction. The yelling, the fighting. But it's not. It's the confusion. The second guessing. The way you start to wonder if you missed something obvious, or if they just got that good at lying. Her words sank in hard. I hadn't realized until that moment how much I needed to hear someone else say it. I keep thinking back to conversations we had. I said, the way Elise used to ask me about my schedule like it was casual. But it wasn't. She was planning. Grace looked at me with those tired eyes. Daniel started asking if I'd mind if he worked late on Thursdays. I said no. It became routine. That's when it happened. Thursday nights. Monday afternoons, I muttered. Her spin class. We both laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was too absurd not to. She pulled her phone out and showed me something. A screenshot of a message thread. Daniel and Elise. Daniel. Wish I was waking up next to you today. Elise. Last night still on my skin. My chest tightened. I wasn't sure if it was jealousy, pain, or just the sick confirmation I didn't ask for. I found it 2 weeks ago, she said. I've read it 100 times. You'd think it would lose power. It doesn't. I nodded. I haven't confronted Elise yet. I've tried. Every time I bring up anything even close to it, she just shifts the conversation. Acts like I'm imagining things. Daniel does the same. He's good at dodging. She paused. I even asked once if there was someone else. He said, "You're being paranoid." Then he bought me flowers. Classic, I muttered. We sat quietly for a while after that. I watched the people outside walking past, smiling, sipping their drinks, carrying groceries like the world hadn't just cracked open beneath them. Then Grace spoke again, quieter this time. Why do you think they do it? I shook my head. I've asked myself that 100 times. Boredom? Thrill? Maybe they felt something was missing. Then why not tell us? She asked, and her voice finally cracked, just a little. Why not say, I'm unhappy? Why sneak around? Because they wanted both, I said. Us and each other. Safety and excitement. The stable house and the cheap hotel. We were the home base. They just wanted to fly off every now and then. Her eyes welled, but she blinked the tears back. I feel like such an idiot. I kept trying to make things better, booked us a vacation, planned date nights. All while he was. Same, I said. I bought Elise concert tickets for her birthday. It was supposed to be a surprise. Grace let out a breath. Jesus, we were putting band-aids on a corpse. That made us both fall silent again. I took a sip and asked something that had been gnawing at me. Why did you reach out? She didn't answer right away. Then, because I knew what it felt like to sit alone with this. And because, when I saw you that day, standing in front of the house, I saw the look I've seen in the mirror for months. That hit deep. I didn't know who else to talk to, she continued. My friends would say leave him, my family would be disappointed, and therapists take weeks to say what I already know. But you? She looked at me. You get it. I nodded. I do. We didn't make promises to meet again. Didn't exchange pleasantries. But when we left the cafe, I turned back and saw her standing there, phone in hand, looking down at the street like she was deciding whether to go home or keep walking. I didn't ask what she chose. But that night, I found myself staring at my phone, tempted to text her. Instead, I just typed out, "How are you holding up?" A few minutes later, she replied, "Still breathing. You?" Same. It was strange how quickly a routine formed. Grace and I didn't text constantly. We weren't friends, not in the conventional sense. But every couple of days, one of us would check in, sometimes just as still standing, sometimes something heavier. Like a photo of her son's drawing from school that read, "Mommy and Daddy and the dog," with Daniel's smile inked in innocent crayon. Sometimes I'd send her screenshots of Elise's calendar, with yoga classes mysteriously blocked during hours I knew she wasn't at the studio. We never explicitly said the affair was still ongoing, but we both knew. And beneath it all was this quiet current. Not attraction, not yet, but connection. The kind of bond born not from flirting or shared hobbies, but from standing in the same emotional wreckage and realizing someone else was bleeding, too. It wasn't romantic. It was real. Elise started getting bolder. Or maybe I started noticing more. Her late nights increased. She began hiding her phone even when she was in the bathroom. Once, I heard her giggling in the living room after midnight, whispering. When I walked in, she jumped. "Who was that?" I asked. She blinked like a deer in headlights, then smiled too quickly. "Just Jess. She's drunk and venting." I nodded, even though we both knew she didn't have a friend named Jess. Then, 3 nights ago, I tried to bring it up again. We were in bed, backs turned to each other, the room dark except for the streetlight cutting a pale slice across the ceiling. "Elise," I said quietly. She didn't answer right away. "Elise, can we talk?" A sigh. "About what?" "Us." That made her shift. "Is something wrong?" Her voice had that edge, sharp, cautious, defensive. "I don't know," I said. "Is there?" She rolled over and propped herself up on one elbow, eyes narrowed in the dim light. "Lucas, if you're about to start one of your something feels off conversations again, can we not? I'm exhausted." "That's the point," I said. "You're always exhausted. Or distant. Or gone." "I have a life, you know," she said. "I have work. Friends. You can't expect me to orbit around you 24/7. I sat up. "I'm not asking for that. I don't feel like you're here anymore. And I think we both know why." That silence. The awful, loaded silence where you hope they'll be honest, and you know they won't be. Her face hardened. "Wow. So now you're accusing me of what? Cheating?" "No," I said. "I'm saying you've changed. And you won't talk to me about it." She laughed, sharp and humorless. "God, Lucas. Just because I don't want sex every night doesn't mean I'm cheating." I winced. That wasn't even where I was going, but now it was loud in the room between us. She shook her head. "You're always so suspicious lately. What happened to trusting each other?" I almost said Daniel happened, but I didn't. I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I just said, I want to fix this, but I can't fix it alone. Her eyes softened for half a second, but then the wall came back up. I'm tired, she muttered, rolling over again. Let's just go to sleep. The silence after that was deafening, but it told me everything I needed to know. The next day, Grace texted me a photo of a playlist. My distraction for the morning. Songs for a divorce that hasn't happened yet. I laughed out loud. It felt good. I replied, weird. I have a playlist called Faking Normal. We might be synced up. Grace, what's your favorite track on it? Me. Track 3, Smiling While Dying Inside, unreleased. Her typing bubble popped up and disappeared a few times before finally landing on. Grace, Lucas, is it wrong that this, talking to you, feels like the only thing that makes sense right now? I stared at that for a while, then typed, no, it makes perfect sense. We met for coffee again the next evening. Not planned. I just texted, can't be in that house tonight. And she replied, meet me in 20? Same cafe, same table, same unspoken understanding. She wore a dark coat this time, scarf looped neatly, curls loose around her shoulders. When she smiled at me, it wasn't bright, but it was real, like we were both learning to smile again in small doses. We didn't talk about Daniel or Elise much. That night, it was about music, books, podcasts we liked, random things that reminded us of who we used to be before we became betrayed. Do you still listen to stuff with love songs? She asked. I shook my head. Tried to play the National the other night. Had to turn it off. She grinned. That one hurts too much. I've been stuck on angry breakup ballads. And weirdly, jazz. It doesn't ask anything of me. We laughed more than we should have. At some point, I noticed I was staring at her a little too long. Not lust. Not exactly. But I saw her differently. The curve of her neck as she tilted her head to sip her coffee. The way her fingers played with the edge of the sleeve when she was lost in thought. The softness around her eyes that hadn't been there the first time we met on the bench. I looked away quickly. She didn't. That night, I didn't sleep. Elise came in late again. I didn't ask where she'd been. But for the first time, I didn't feel alone in it. Somewhere out there, Grace was lying in her own bed, probably awake too. Probably staring at the ceiling, wondering if she was crazy. Just like me. Two strangers in different homes. Linked not by love, but by the silence love left behind. And for now, that was enough. The invitation came unexpectedly. Grace texted me one Friday morning while I was pretending to care about emails from clients. Grace, I know this is random, but there's an art exhibit tonight. Small gallery. Wine, weird sculpture, overly serious people. Wanna come? I stared at the screen. My instinct was to say no. Elise would ask where I was going. I'd have to come up with a lie I wasn't used to telling. But then I remembered how silent the house had been that whole week. How Elise's kisses had become cheek-quick, guilt-sweetened things, and how I could smell someone else's cologne lingering in her hair when we hugged goodnight. I typed back, me. Text me the address. What time? The gallery was in an old industrial building that smelled faintly of wine, varnish, and ambition. White walls, minimalist lighting. Strangers sipping from stemless glasses, nodding at canvases that made no sense at all. I wore a button-down and jeans, trying to look like I fit in. I didn't. But Grace did. She was already there when I arrived, standing near a tall, abstract piece that looked like metal intestines welded together. She wore a long black coat, a plum scarf, and simple makeup that somehow made her eyes seem even more intense than usual. She smiled when she saw me, and it wasn't the usual small, tired smile. It was wide, genuine. I wasn't sure you'd come, she said as I approached. I wasn't either, I replied. But the promise of overpriced wine and awkward art critiques was too tempting. She handed me a glass. This one tastes like regret and grapes. I laughed. Perfect. Goes well with my emotional palate. We wandered the exhibit slowly. Not too close to anyone else. Not too far from each other. Grace would lean in occasionally to whisper commentary that had me stifling laughs. That one looks like a nervous breakdown in watercolor, she said at one point, nodding at a piece with aggressive red slashes across the canvas. You just described my entire February, I replied. As the night went on, I noticed something I hadn't before. I was watching her more than the art. The way she moved, graceful but grounded. The way she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The way she'd pause before speaking, like she considered the weight of every word. At one point, she leaned in to look at a sculpture, a warped, jagged piece of twisted bronze, and her shoulder brushed mine. Just briefly. I didn't move away. She didn't either. Neither of us said anything, but I felt it. The shift. The air between us thickening just slightly, not with tension, but with awareness. We made it through most of the gallery, winding into a quieter back room with dimmer lighting and fewer people. "This one's my favorite," she said softly. It was a painting, simple. A woman sitting at a kitchen table, back turned to the viewer, morning light spilling in through a cracked window. Her posture was weary. The table was empty, but the light was warm. "It's quiet," I said. Grace nodded. "Lonely, but peaceful, like she finally stopped pretending." We stood there for a while, side by side, not talking. Then she turned to me. "I've missed this." I raised an eyebrow. "Bad art?" She smiled. "No. This. Feeling normal. Laughing. Talking without hiding." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, me too." Her eyes lingered on mine a second too long. My chest tightened, not with desire, not yet, but with something more fragile. Hope. We left the gallery just after 9. The street was quiet, the sky low with clouds, and the air smelled faintly of rain. "Walk with me?" she asked. We strolled down the block, not touching, not speaking much, just walking. The silence between us had changed. It wasn't born of pain now. It was something else. She glanced over at me. "Do you think we're doing something wrong?" I paused. Meeting each other, or needing each other? She didn't answer right away. Then both. I thought about that. I think we're surviving. And no one gets to write the rules for that, but us. She nodded slowly. We reached her car. She turned to face me, her coat pulled tight around her. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For tonight. For letting me forget, just for a little while." I swallowed. "Anytime." She hesitated. Just a second. Then leaned in. A hug. But it lingered. Longer than it should have. My arms wrapped around her, her cheek pressed against my shoulder, and for a brief, suspended moment, the world stopped spinning. When we pulled apart, her eyes were shining, but not from tears. "Good night, Lucas." "Good night, Grace." She got into her car. I stood there for a while, watching her taillights fade into the street. I didn't go home right away. I drove around the city aimlessly, windows down, breathing in the night air like it might wash something clean inside me. And when I finally pulled into the driveway Elise and I once called ours, I realized something. That evening hadn't been about Elise or Daniel. It had been about me and Grace. Two strangers, finding something fragile and human in the ruins left behind. And whatever this was between us, it wasn't revenge. It was beginning to feel like healing. I didn't plan on confronting Elise that night, but something about walking back into that house, our house, after the gallery with Grace made everything feel too fake, too hollow to keep pretending. Elise was on the couch, phone in hand, scrolling like she didn't have a care in the world. She looked up at me, gave a weak smile, then went back to her screen. "How was your night?" she asked. I watched her for a second. "Fine." She didn't press further, just nodded, half listening, already slipping back into whatever message thread she was absorbed in. That was the moment it hit me. She didn't care. Not really. Not enough to notice I wasn't really there. I dropped my keys on the table louder than necessary. "We need to talk." She blinked, clearly caught off guard. "Okay, about what?" I sat down across from her. "About Daniel." The name landed like a grenade. She froze, just for a second. Then her entire body shifted, defensive, cold, distant. "What about him?" I stared at her. Just don't insult me by pretending you don't know." She scoffed. "Lucas, if you're going to throw accusations around." "I saw you," I said flatly. "In his car. Kissing him. I've read the emails. I've seen the photos." Silence. Her face drained of color. I didn't want to believe it at first. I continued. "But it's all there. The receipts. The messages. The lies." Elise set her phone down, slowly. "Okay," she said after a long pause. "Fine. Yes. I slept with him. A few times." "A few." She flinched. It wasn't serious. I laughed, a hollow, humorless sound. "It went on for months, Elise." She looked down. "It didn't mean anything. I swear. It was stupid. It was just an escape." "From what?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "From me? From this life you helped build?" She hesitated. "From everything. I don't know. I felt stuck, like we were going in circles. Daniel was just easy. Easy, I repeated. You think that excuses it? No, she snapped. But maybe if you'd been paying more attention, you would have noticed how unhappy I've been. There it was. The shift. The blame. I leaned forward. I rebuilt this house for us. I worked overtime, weekends, trying to make a future you said you wanted. And all that time, you were sneaking around with him. Her voice dropped. I didn't mean to fall into it. It just happened. No, I said quietly. It doesn't just happen. You made choices. Repeatedly. She looked like she wanted to cry, but the tears didn't come. Maybe they weren't there anymore. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't mean to hurt you. But you did. A long silence followed. I didn't even feel anger anymore. Just a hollow ache in my chest. I already knew, I said softly. She blinked. What? I've known for weeks. I've just been processing. Her face twisted into something like guilt. Or maybe just the fear of losing control. So what now? She asked, voice small. I looked her in the eyes. Now? Now I don't think I want to keep pretending. She looked away. You're ending it. I didn't end anything, I replied. You did. I'm just acknowledging it. She didn't say anything after that. Just sat there, staring at the floor. The next morning, I filed the paperwork. A few hours later, I got a text from Grace. Grace. He lied again. Said he ended it with her weeks ago. Found another receipt this morning. Hotel from last Thursday. Me. I confronted Elise last night. She finally admitted it. Grace. And me. We're done. Filing today. There was a pause. Then, Grace. I'm doing the same. Just told Daniel I want a separation. He said I'm being dramatic. Called it a rough patch. Me. They always say that. Grace. I'm not crying this time. That feels strange. Me. Strange is good. It means something's shifting. Grace. You free tonight? I need out of my house. Out of my head. Me. Always. We met at a quiet Italian place tucked behind a bookstore downtown. It wasn't fancy, but it smelled like warmth and garlic and comfort. The kind of place people go when they want to feel human again. Grace wore a soft green sweater and jeans. No makeup. Hair tied back in a loose braid. She looked tired, but not broken. When I sat down, she just looked at me and said, "Thank you for not making me feel crazy." You never were, I said. You were just hurt. Dinner was slow, quiet, full of sips of wine and half-finished stories. We didn't talk about Elise or Daniel much. We didn't need to. We talked about everything else. Childhood memories. The weirdest job we ever had. Favorite movies. We even laughed. Real, belly-deep laughs that caught us both off guard. At one point, she reached across the table to grab her wine glass, and her fingers brushed mine. We didn't pull away. She looked at me, eyes steady. This isn't what I expected. Any of it. Me neither, I said. But I'm glad we're here. Even if it started with heartbreak. Especially because it started with heartbreak. That night, I walked her to her car. It was chilly, a breeze stirring fallen leaves around our feet. We stood there for a long second, neither of us wanting to say goodbye. Then she leaned in, and I didn't stop her. Our lips didn't crash. They rested. Her mouth soft, warm, unsure. Not desperation. Not lust. A kiss that felt like a question. And my answer was yes. Not because I needed revenge. Not because I was lonely. But because in that moment, I wasn't broken anymore. And neither was she. We didn't call it a getaway. That would have made it sound like a vacation, like something two people in love planned months ahead of time, with matching luggage and travel playlists. This wasn't that. It was an escape. A pause. A moment stolen from the wreckage before we had to return to lawyers, division of assets, and the unbearable awkwardness of sleeping on opposite sides of beds that no longer belonged to anyone. Grace texted me midweek. Grace, I found this cabin. 2 hours out. Quiet. Fireplace. No judgment. Want to disappear with me for a couple days? I stared at the message longer than I should have. Not because I didn't want to go, but because part of me was terrified of what it would mean if I did. Still, I replied. Me. Pack light or run away forever kind of heavy? Grace. Somewhere in between. The drive was quiet in that comfortable way. Grace had a playlist on. Soft acoustic stuff, Bon Iver, some old Damien Rice. Music that understood grief better than most people. The leaves were beginning to turn. Gold and amber flared in patches through the trees as we curved along country roads that felt untouched by the kind of lives we'd just escaped. This is insane, she said as we pulled into the gravel driveway of the cabin. We're strangers, technically. We're more real than most people I've known for years, I replied. The cabin was simple. Wood and stone, sloped roof, wide porch. Inside was a fireplace, a small kitchen, and 2 bedrooms that sat awkwardly across from one another, like 2 people trying not to stare. We dropped our bags, opened some wine, and sat on the back porch in silence, wrapped in blankets and the smell of pine. Grace looked out over the woods and said, "Do you think they miss us?" "Elise," I said, "I think she misses control. She misses being the one who got to choose how everything ended." Grace nodded. "Daniel still texts. Like nothing's changed. I blocked him, but I check his name in my spam folder like an addict. I check Elise's Instagram," I admitted. "Not because I care. Just habit. She's still posting fake smiles like everything's fine." Grace looked at me. "You ever feel like this whole life we built was just something we were auditioning for? And now the show's been canceled?" I laughed softly. "Yeah, but maybe that means we can finally stop acting." She sipped her wine. "To bad scripts and better endings." We clinked glasses. That night, we made dinner together. Nothing fancy. Pasta, roasted vegetables, garlic bread burned slightly at the edges because we both got distracted talking about our worst vacations. Grace laughed harder than I'd ever seen when I told her about the time Elise made us hike 8 miles for a hidden waterfall that turned out to be a muddy trickle. Her laugh was different. Not polite. Not reserved. Unfiltered. After dinner, we lit the fireplace and sat in front of it, blankets around our shoulders, wine forgotten on the coffee table. The firelight danced on her skin, warming her cheeks, glinting off her hair. She looked over at me and said, "I haven't felt safe in months." I didn't ask what she meant. I knew. She turned toward me slowly. There was something unspoken in the space between us, something fragile but undeniable. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Can I kiss you again?" I didn't answer. I just leaned in. Our mouths met softly at first, cautious, uncertain, then deeper, slower, as if we were trying to memorize the feel of something that neither of us had allowed ourselves to want until now. Her fingers curled into my shirt. Mine slid into her hair. It wasn't sex. Not yet. It was permission. A promise that even in all the wreckage, we were still human. Still capable of connection. Still capable of wanting, not out of revenge, but need. We eventually pulled apart, our foreheads resting together, breath mingling in the quiet crackle of the fire. Grace whispered, "I don't want to ruin this." "You're not," I said. "This isn't broken." We sat like that for a long time, holding each other. Eventually, she stood and walked toward her bedroom, pausing in the doorway. She looked back at me, her voice low. "You coming?" I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to. Because I did. More than anything. I crossed the space between us and stepped into the room. We didn't rush. We moved slowly, like 2 people tracing scars and learning to recognize themselves in someone else's hands. She undressed me gently, not with hunger, but with reverence. I did the same, pausing to kiss the hollow of her throat, the curve of her shoulder, the stretch marks on her hips that she tried to hide with the edge of a blanket. We didn't say anything when it happened. No declarations. No questions. Just breath, warmth, skin, and the soft sounds of rediscovery. And when we were done, wrapped around each other beneath the thick quilt, she whispered, "I didn't think this would feel like healing." I kissed her shoulder. Neither did I. The next morning, we didn't pretend. We woke tangled together. We made coffee in our underwear. She played music on her phone while I fried eggs. We sat on the porch again, this time with her legs over mine, my hand resting absently on her thigh. It didn't feel like escape anymore. It felt like the beginning of something neither of us had the words for. Later, we went on a walk through the woods, talking about everything and nothing. She told me about her first college heartbreak. I told her about the time I almost proposed to the wrong woman. We laughed. We held hands. We let the silence fill the spaces without making them feel empty. And that night, we made love again, less carefully this time. Still slow, still intentional, but with more certainty, more ownership. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And after months of lies, that felt like more than enough. Coming back felt stranger than leaving. The cabin had been suspended in time, quiet, untouched, and somehow outside the reach of reality. But as I pulled into the driveway of what used to be our house, reality came rushing back like a cold tide. The porch light was on. Elise's car in the driveway. Curtains drawn. Everything looked normal. It wasn't. Inside, Elise was in the kitchen, barefoot, sipping from a wine glass. She turned when I stepped through the door, eyes wide. "You're back," she said. Obviously. She studied me for a second, her arms crossing over her chest. "Where were you?" I hung up my coat without answering. "I asked you a question," she said again, sharper now. "You disappeared for 3 days?" I turned to her slowly. "You mean like the dozens of times you disappeared to Daniel's?" Her lips parted. No answer came. I took a step closer. "It's over, Elise. You know that, right?" "I didn't say it wasn't," she said quietly. "But I thought maybe we could talk. You've been distant, cold." I laughed, short, bitter, cold. "You cheated on me for half a year, and I'm the one being cold?" She didn't flinch, but her grip on the wine glass tightened. I said I was sorry. "Do you even know what that word means?" She looked away, shame or maybe just defeat sinking into her posture. "I know I hurt you," she said, "but I didn't think you'd be so quick to give up." "Give up?" I asked. "You gave up the moment you let him touch you." I just finally stopped lying to myself about it. There was a long pause. Then she whispered, "Is there someone else?" I said nothing. She turned, finally setting her glass down. "There is, isn't there?" Still, I didn't speak. Her voice rose slightly. "I saw a message. From someone named Grace. On your phone. Are you sleeping with her?" I met her gaze. "It doesn't matter. Like hell it doesn't." I stepped forward. "You don't get to be jealous now. You don't get to question where I find comfort after everything you destroyed." Her eyes filled with tears. "So that's it. You're just going to move on? With her?" "I didn't choose Grace to spite you," I said, quieter now. "She understands. She's been through it too. She didn't lie to me. She didn't gaslight me. She didn't burn down what we had." Elise said nothing. "I want you to sign the papers," I added. Her face crumbled. "Lucas, no more crying," I said firmly. "No more bargaining. Just sign. Let's end it with some shred of dignity." She didn't answer. I walked past her and into the guest room, closed the door, locked it. That night, I didn't dream. I just stared at the ceiling and thought about Grace's hand on my chest, her breath on my neck, the way she made silence feel safe again. The next morning, I texted Grace. "Me. Back home. Surreal." Grace. "Me too. Daniel showed up last night." "Me. What?" Grace. "Tried to tell me he wanted to start over. Said the time apart made him realize what he stood to lose." Me. "Let me guess. No mention of Elise." Grace. "None. I asked if he told her it was over. He said she knows how I feel. Which obviously means nothing." Me. "You okay?" Grace. "Yeah. I didn't let him in. Told him we're past the part where words matter." I stared at her message for a while, pride swelling in my chest. Me. "You were always too good for him." Grace. "And you were always too loyal to someone who didn't deserve it." Over the next week, Elise flipped between anger and desperation. One night, she made dinner and lit candles, trying to recreate something we'd lost long ago. I didn't touch the food. Another night, she cornered me in the hallway and asked if I ever loved her. I told her the truth, yes. Enough to forgive once. Not enough to forget twice. She signed the divorce papers 3 days later. No tears this time. Just quiet. I packed some things. Moved into a short-term apartment. A friend from work had a connection and got me a month-to-month lease near downtown. It was small, but it was mine. And for the first time in years, I woke up without feeling like I owed anyone a performance. Grace and I didn't rush anything after the weekend. We still texted daily, called occasionally. We didn't label what we were. Didn't plan for next steps. But I started stopping by her place with coffee. She'd come over with takeout. We watched old movies and sat in comfortable silence. We kissed on the couch without worrying who might see. She told me Daniel tried again. Sent flowers. A letter. "He used to write me poems," she said one night. "Years ago, before everything fell apart. This one was just a sad imitation. Words strung together to mimic guilt." "What did you do with it?" She smiled faintly. "Burned it. In the fireplace. Felt kind of poetic." I laughed. Should have saved it for a dramatic reading. "Oh, I did that too. With a wine glass in hand and everything." She made me feel light again. Not giddy. Not drunk on something temporary. Just free. Not once did we mention love. Not yet. But sometimes I'd wake up with her curled against me, her leg draped over mine, and think, maybe this isn't a rebound. Maybe this is what it looks like when two broken people learn to build something honest. One afternoon, I helped her repaint the spare bedroom. She said she wanted to turn it into an office. I stood on a ladder, reaching for the corners, while she played music and danced barefoot across the tarp-covered floor. "I haven't danced like this since before the kids," she said, laughing. "You've got moves," I said. "You haven't seen anything yet." Later, with paint drying and sunlight flooding the room, she looked at me and said, "Do you feel guilty? About Elise?" She nodded. I thought about it. A little, I admitted. Not for leaving, but for how long I stayed after I stopped being seen. She stepped closer. "You weren't invisible. You just weren't valued. There's a difference." That night, I kissed her like it was the first time. And maybe it was. The first time I kissed someone without ghosts in the room. It was Grace who brought it up first. We were lying in bed one Sunday morning, her head on my chest, sunlight cutting soft patterns across the comforter. Outside, the city was waking up slow, distant car horns, the chirp of birds confused by the shifting seasons, life pushing forward. We hadn't said much since waking. Just the occasional brush of her fingers across my ribs, the way she'd hum something I didn't recognize. But then she propped herself up on one elbow and looked at me with those eyes. Curious, searching, a little hesitant. "Lucas," she said softly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you ever wonder if we're just rebound people for each other?" I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't have thoughts, too many, actually, but because I wasn't sure how to give them form without messing up what we'd built. She continued, "I've been thinking about it a lot lately. How quickly we found each other after everything fell apart. I mean, statistically speaking, it's not supposed to last, right?" I sat up slightly, leaning on one arm to face her. "Do you want it to?" She blinked. "Last? Yeah." Grace bit her bottom lip. "That's the thing I do. And that scares the hell out of me." I nodded. "Same." She let out a small laugh, one that sounded more like a sigh. "I feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like maybe we're just two people clinging to each other in the aftermath of something awful, and one day we'll wake up and realize we were just temporary relief." "I've thought about that," I admitted. "More than once." Her voice dropped. "Do you think we're lying to ourselves?" I reached out and took her hand, letting our fingers intertwine. "I think what happened to us made everything blurry for a while. We were hurt, angry, lonely. But now I don't think this is about them anymore." She tilted her head. "Then what's it about?" "You," I said. "Me. This thing between us that doesn't feel temporary." Grace studied me for a long moment. "I keep trying to poke holes in it. I keep waiting to feel like this is a mistake. But I don't." "Me neither," I whispered. Then, quieter still, "I'm falling for you." She didn't flinch, didn't pull away. Instead, her eyes filled, just a shimmer of moisture, and she leaned in to kiss me. Not out of passion, out of relief. Later that afternoon, we took a walk through the arboretum. Fall had started to really settle in. Leaves crisp underfoot, trees flashing with amber and crimson, the smell of distant chimney smoke in the breeze. Grace walked with her arm through mine, the kind of closeness that didn't need performance. Just presence. We sat on a bench under a sugar maple, watching a group of kids chase each other across the lawn. A mother called out for her son to slow down. A father lifted a toddler into the air, spinning until they both laughed breathlessly. "I used to think I had that," Grace said quietly. "With Daniel." She nodded. "We had a phase. The picture-perfect moments. The Instagram family. The holidays where everything matched. But eventually, I realized we weren't happy. We were just polished." "I know that feeling," I said. "Elise and I were good at pretending. To friends. To family. Hell, to ourselves." Grace looked down at her hands. "Do you think it's possible to be genuinely happy again? Or are we always going to be looking over our shoulders?" I reached over, took her hand. "I don't think happiness is perfect. I think it's messy, imperfect, quiet. But yeah, I think we can get there." She turned toward me. "What about guilt?" "About what?" "Starting over. So soon." I exhaled. I used to feel it. But not anymore. Elise made her choices. I lived in denial for months. I lost pieces of myself in that silence. "You didn't just show up as a distraction. You showed me I wasn't invisible." Grace smiled faintly. "Sometimes I think about all the ways this could go wrong. And then I think about how right it already feels. And I can breathe again." I squeezed her hand. "Let's just take it one breath at a time." That evening, we sat on the floor of her apartment, eating pizza out of the box, red wine in mismatched mugs. Grace had changed into an oversized hoodie, bare legs tucked under her. I wore sweats and a t-shirt with a fading college logo. She leaned her head on my shoulder. Want to hear something ridiculous? Always. I've been writing about us. In my journal. I turned toward her. Really? She nodded, suddenly shy. Not like love letters or anything. Just thoughts. Feelings. Trying to make sense of it. Can I read it? She laughed. Absolutely not. Fair enough. Then she looked at me seriously. Do you talk about us? To anyone? Not really, I said. My brother asked if I was seeing someone. I said, yeah, kind of. It's complicated. Grace raised an eyebrow. Kind of. I grinned. Okay, definitely. Better. We clinked our mugs together. That night, after we made love, slower, deeper, more deliberately than ever before, we lay there in the soft glow of the bedside lamp. Grace traced patterns on my chest with her fingertip. You said you were falling for me. I meant it. She looked up. I love you. The words landed so softly, I almost didn't register them. But when I did, something loosened in my chest I hadn't realized was clenched. I love you too. Not fast, not reckless, but real. Built from the ashes of things we thought would define us forever. I didn't expect it to feel like this. Elise slid the manila envelope across the table, her hand pulling back quickly like the pages inside might burn her fingers. The cafe was quiet. 2 tables away, a man read a newspaper. The barista swept imaginary crumbs into her palm. The world moved like it didn't care that this was the last page of our story. It's signed, Elise said, her voice small. Tired. No makeup. Hair in a lazy bun. A sweatshirt she used to sleep in. For the first time in years, she looked normal, not curated. I nodded, but didn't reach for the envelope. So, she said, drumming her fingers lightly on the edge of the table. That's it. I looked up at her. Yeah, that's it. She bit the inside of her cheek, eyes scanning mine. You're not going to say anything? No final words? Closure or whatever? I let the silence settle for a few seconds. Then, what do you want me to say, Elise? That I forgive you? That I still care? She flinched, but didn't look away. I think we both know we've been living separate lives for a long time, I continued. We just didn't want to be the first one to admit it. I didn't hate you, she said suddenly. I want you to know that. I never thought you did. She tucked her hands under her thighs, fidgeting. He was just different. Not better. Just a break from the version of myself I couldn't stand anymore. And I was part of that version, I said. She nodded slowly. I finally picked up the envelope. Opened it. Saw the signature, clean and centered on the last page. Did you love him? I asked before I could stop myself. Her eyes clouded. No, not really. I think I loved the distraction. The validation. The lie. I nodded. And Grace? She asked, not unkindly. I met her eyes. Yes. She blinked. That answer wasn't what she expected. But she didn't argue. I hope it works out, she said after a long pause. With her. I really do. Thank you. We both stood at the same time, unsure if a hug was appropriate, if a goodbye should be spoken aloud. In the end, we just nodded, 2 people who once shared a bed, a life, a dream, and then let each other go. I walked out first. The autumn wind caught my coat. The air felt different, lighter. That afternoon, I helped Grace move into her new place. It wasn't far. A small second-story apartment in a quiet neighborhood, just off the main street. Hardwood floors. Big windows. A tiny balcony that barely fit 2 chairs. But it was hers. She stood in the middle of the living room, arms crossed, spinning in a slow circle. It doesn't feel real. It's yours, I said, setting down the last box. That makes it real. She smiled, eyes wide, hair pulled back under a baseball cap. She wore a faded concert tee and jeans with a tear at the knee. I'd never seen her more beautiful. Come here, she said, opening her arms. I stepped in, wrapped around her. She smelled like lavender and paint and something sweeter I couldn't name. I saw Daniel this morning, she said against my chest. My body stiffened slightly. Did he say anything? He said goodbye. Seriously? She nodded. He left a letter. Real this time. No poems. Just honesty. He said he finally understood why I stopped begging for the truth. Because it was never about the facts. It was about the respect. I held her a little tighter. I didn't cry, she added. Not even once. I just felt done. You are. We spent the rest of the afternoon unpacking. I hung curtains while she arranged bookshelves. At some point, we stopped to eat greasy Thai food on the floor, legs tangled, laughter echoing in the empty walls. Later, as the sun dipped behind the trees, we carried mugs of tea to the tiny balcony. "I don't feel broken anymore," she said suddenly, staring out into the pink sky. I looked at her, the curve of her jaw, the way the wind teased a strand of hair across her cheek. "Neither do I." She reached out her hand, fingers grazing mine. I laced them together without hesitation. There was no music, no fireworks, no grand declarations, just peace. A kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. That night, we curled into each other on the mattress on the floor, her bed frame still waiting to be assembled. A single lamp lit the room, boxes stacked in corners. And yet, it felt like home. Grace rolled over to face me, her voice soft. "You think people will judge us?" I smiled. "People always judge, but they don't know what we went through. They don't know how many nights we spent alone in beds we didn't feel safe in. They don't know what it means to find someone in the middle of your ruin." She nodded. "It still feels fast sometimes, but also like I've known you forever. Maybe grief rewrites time. Maybe." We kissed slowly, without urgency, without hiding. And when we fell asleep, it wasn't with the weight of guilt or fear or confusion. It was with the comfort of something earned. 6 months later, I found myself standing in Grace's backyard, a spool of string lights in one hand, a plastic hook in the other, and a beer bottle resting precariously on the deck railing. "Higher," Grace called from below. "You're tall. Use that to your advantage." "I'm tall, not a miracle worker." I shot back, stretching to hook the lights between two wooden beams. The sun was still clinging to the edge of the horizon, casting everything in soft gold. Music drifted from the portable speaker on the table, something light and nostalgic, the kind of thing people hum without realizing. Tonight wasn't about us. Not officially, anyway. It was just a gathering, friends, neighbors, a couple of Grace's co-workers, my brother and his wife. We told people we wanted to celebrate fresh starts. It was easier than explaining the real story. 2 broken marriages, 1 ugly affair, and the unlikely comfort found in someone else's wreckage. "Looks good," Grace said as I stepped down from the ladder. She handed me my beer and leaned in for a quick kiss. "Thank you for doing this. For the lights. For everything." Her voice was different these days. Less guarded. Softer, but not fragile. More like someone who had been through the fire and wasn't afraid of the burn anymore. "You made this home," I said. "I just showed up with power tools and some decent playlists." She laughed, the sound cutting through the quiet yard like sunlight. "We make a good team." Yeah, we did. The grill was going by the time guests started arriving. Bottles clinked, laughter spilled over the fence, and the backyard filled with the kind of warmth I used to think only existed in movies. I watched Grace move between people with ease, offering drinks, introducing strangers like old friends, stealing glances at me across the yard. We were still new, technically, still figuring things out. But the awkward part had faded. There were no apologies anymore. No shadows of Elise or Daniel lurking behind every joke or touch. Just us. At one point, Grace's friend Maya pulled me aside near the kitchen. "So," she said, arms crossed, lips curled into a knowing smile. "You're the guy?" I raised an eyebrow. "The guy?" The one who made her stop looking backward. I smiled. She made me stop too. Maya leaned against the counter. I was skeptical, you know. Grace needed time to heal. I wasn't sure anyone walking in that soon was going to help. Neither was I. But she's lighter now. I don't think I've seen her this grounded in years. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." "Plan to," I said. She clinked her glass against mine and left me standing there with the weight of those words in my chest. Later, after the last guest left and the backyard was littered with empty cups and chairs pushed askew, we stood together under the lights we'd strung earlier. It was quiet now. Grace kicked off her shoes and stepped into the grass barefoot, the hem of her dress brushing her knees. I followed her without a word. She turned to me, eyes reflecting the warm string lights overhead. "You remember the first time we met?" I nodded. "Of course I do. You were sitting on a bench outside Daniel's house, looking like the world had just fallen apart." "It had," she said, "but I didn't know then that it was also the start of something." "I didn't either," I said. "I just knew you didn't look surprised to see me." She smiled, stepping closer. "You asked me how I knew. I remember. And I told you. So you found out too? I reached for her hand. Best question anyone's ever asked me. She laughed gently, leaning into me, her head resting against my shoulder. I'm not broken anymore, she said quietly, echoing the words she once told me. I know. We stood there for a long time, letting the quiet wrap around us. The stars blinked faintly above. A breeze rustled the trees. And in that moment, it didn't matter how things started, how ugly or unfair or messy they'd been. What mattered was this. Us. Here. Now. Not a rebound. Not a mistake. A new beginning.
As this video comes to an end, I feel a deep sense of satisfaction seeing everything fall into place. That final moment wasn't just justice. It was the truth finally catching up. In my opinion, this wasn't cruelty. This was a necessary line being drawn. When someone breaks trust again and again, they shouldn't expect kindness to remain. Now, I will guide you step by step so you can handle situations like this in real life. Step 1. Stay calm before reacting. When you feel betrayed, don't explode immediately. The calmer you are, the clearer you see. Step 2. Watch what they do, not what they say. Words can lie. Patterns don't. Step 3. Decide your limit early. If you don't define your boundaries, people will cross them without hesitation. Step 4. Take action without drama. You don't need revenge. Distance is enough. Step 5. Move forward without looking back. Once you see someone's true nature, don't forget it. So tell me, when everything collapsed for them, was it justice or just consequences?